Good afternoon. Today is the 15th of April and it's time for yet another not particularly interesting, very vague and, well, probably quite a boring vlog. So over the weekend I had the privilege of doing a job for an old friend of mine. She was actually one of my first ever paid clients in 2017. I think it was exactly 8 years ago that I sourced the last car for her. Now back in the day, this is before ultra low emission zone. It's when cars we can't talk about were really, really popular, and there was a glut of very, very cheap second-hand cars on the market. So she had a Vauxhall Astra that I think had been handed down to her by a family member, and I don't know how old the Astra was, but the cam belt had gone because she hadn't changed it, so that wasn't so good, so she needed a car. Now, I did the job actually locally to where I lived at the time, which is in southwest London, and she had a budget of around £1,000, I think it was, for a car. And so we found on the same day two cars, which actually ended up going to two different people that I knew. One of them was a 2003 Seat Leon that was £900, and the other one was a 2005 Hyundai Getz that was £800. And actually, I sourced both of them for two different people, which was amazing. It was a very efficient way of doing things. I saw three cars. One was dreadful. I've actually talked about that car on the channel before. It was a 2001 Seat Ibiza. It's one of the worst used cars I've ever seen. Yeah, so the Getz was the one that she chose. It was a 1.1 CDX model, and it was £800. And she bought it, took it back with her. I think she lived in the East Midlands somewhere or something like that. And unfortunately, she had the same problem with the car that she had with the Astra, that she didn't do the cam belt. I did tell her to do the cam belt when she bought it, because you've got to bear in mind, this car was 12 years old when she got it, and I don't even know if it ever had it done by then. Fortunately, on the 1.1 Hyundai, I think it's an Upsilon engine in that, the engine's a non-interference type. So when the cam belt went on that, unlike the Astra, which destroyed the car, she was able to actually get that repaired. I think the water pump's actually one thing it went initially. So she was able to get it repaired. It got put back on the road. Back in February, she got in touch with me and said, "Hello, I'd like a new car, please." I said, "Okay, well, we're still in business. What's the car would you like?" She said, "Well, I need to replace my Hyundai." I was like, "What do you mean? The Getz?" She said, "Yeah, I've still got it." I'm like, "You still got an £800 Hyundai Getz that you got in 2017? She said, "Yeah, I've still got it." I was like, "Well, that's nice. It's nice to see that actually cars that I sourced back in the day are actually still on the road. That's great. Okay, well, what's wrong with this?" She said, "Well, it needs a new rear axle for the MOT." I was thinking, that's not going for another MOT. It can't be economical to do that, surely, on a 20-year-old Hyundai Getz, and of course it's not. So I've seen it, and it's a little bit sort of beaten up, but I mean, it's done really well. So she needed something to replace it. I said, "Look, I'm afraid that you're not going to find a car for that sort of money anymore for what you need." She said, "Okay, well, I've got £3,000. Can I get some £3,000? I was thinking, well, surely you can get something nice for £3,000. So she lives in the East Midlands, and I just said, "Look, it's not probably going to be economical for me to drive all the way up there, do a job there, and things like that. It's going to cost you quite a lot of money for me to do that. So, is there somewhere that you can, meet me a bit closer?" She said, "Yeah, I can come down to Berkshire. My family lives down there, and you can do a job down there." I was like, "Great, fantastic. That's a lot closer, it's like an hour from where I live." So, that's what we did. So I contacted, as I normally do, a few places in the area where there were cars, and I found that there's lots and lots of cars for £3,000 that would, actually suit her. Now, yeah, of course, you can buy quite a lot of cars for under £3,000, but we're specifically looking for what most people are looking for, actually, with that sort of budget. We're looking for a little hatchback that's economical to run with a petrol engine, and that's not, massively rusty or high mileage. Something about the same size as the Getz or slightly bigger. So that's what we're looking for. Actually, it's a very competitive segment of the market. There's a lot of people who want cars like that at the moment, which is understandable, really, given what's going on. So first of all, we saw a 2008 Subaru Justy. Now, the Subaru Justy is the same car as the Daihatsu Sirion and the Perodua Mivi. They are the same car. So we got there, and it had only done 55,000 miles. And on the photographs, it looked great. It looked brilliant. I couldn't see any rust in it or anything like that. That's the biggest problem with those cars, is the rust. But while we got there, the chap said to me that because it was a Subaru, it was better made than the Daihatsu version. And yeah, I've driven a Daihatsu Sirion before of that generation. I've driven a 2007 or 8 one, I think it was. And they were built in the same factory by the same people. Literally. There is no difference between those cars apart from the specification and some of the badging and maybe some of the grille is different or something like that. They were built by the same people. They are the same car. A little 1K RFE engine, I think, from a Toyota Aygo in there. So, sensibly quite good cars if you can find one that's not rusty. This one, it wasn't rusty, but my friend's an artist, and she said to me, why is the paint on one side of the car so different from the other one? And it turned out that someone had painted one side of the car, but really badly. You could feel the texture of the paint. You could see the colour match wasn't good. And it was really wobbly in terms of the gear change. Now, they're not unknown for that. It can happen a lot with them, but this was quite bad. And also, it had 7 owners. And the other chap has sort of been weird with me about, the fact that, oh yes, it's a Subaru, so it'll be better built, even though they're built in the same factory by the same people. That wasn't so good, so we left them alone. They went to see a 2008 Nissan Note. Now, this car hadn't moved for a little while, but it had this sort of layer of oil on it that attracted all kinds of horrible film and sort of dirt and grease. And so it looked like it had been on the lake for about a couple of months, which hadn't been, but it just looked like that. And they'd taken the wheel trims off, which made the car look very, very sort of plain. And also I could see the shut lines on the bonnet on one side were different from the other. And so I knew that the car had some kind of repair at some point, even though there wasn't a cat mark against or anything. Now, the car advertised of one owner from new and a full service history. Yeah, it had one owner from new. That was seemed to be kind of explained by the logbook and also the history that was in the service book, and it's just full service history. But what it meant was it wasn't the car being serviced every time according to the recommendations. It was just all the services were recorded, and that ended in 2020. And I looked at the back of one of the sills, and it was starting to rust quite badly. Now the car drove just fine, absolutely fine, wasn't any problem with it. But like the Subaru, the air cooling wasn't working, which for me is never a particularly good sign of a car being looked after if you are bothered to do that. It's not the end of the world, but it just is one thing to bear in mind. So we left that one alone because it wasn't actually ready. It had about a month's MOT on it as well, so that wasn't any good. It was a shame that the boss of the company wasn't there, but he left someone else in charge, because I think we would have done a bit better with him and be able to sort of talk about these things. He would have maybe remedied some of them, but never mind. So we moved on to the next car. And this was a car that actually is very, very beloved of Chops Garage, maybe Car UK, a 2009 Suzuki Splash. It was nice looking car, actually. They are good cars. I sourced the Nagila before, which is exactly the same. It was 2011 Nagila I sourced in 2018. I think my client still got that as well, actually. 1.2 Vauxhall Corsa engine in this. They're generally pretty reliable. One thing you've got to watch out for is they do eat through suspension bushes, and having seen like a couple of them that day, both had advisories about the MOT for suspension bushes. So this first car looked okay. Aircon didn't work, never mind. 53,000 miles, I think it was £2,400. So 59 registration, which was, sensibly that looked okay. It could have been a really good car. But there was a big problem with that. When I set off, I could feel the clutch juddering really, really badly, like it was sort of collapsing every time I set off. And I know from experience that's either the flywheel or the clutch collapsing. And I'm checking with Mr. Coleman later on, the clutch was sort of collapsing, so we need a new clutch in it. And the chap would have known who was selling it that was happening, but he just didn't say anything. So we then decided not to buy that car. I didn't let my client drive it, to be honest. We then looked at a red one that he also had, and he said, oh yes, it's also a 1.2, and this one's got working air conditioning. I was like, great, okay, that's fine. If this is a more basic model, this is a 2012, and it had slightly higher mileage, like 68 or something. It wasn't too bad. But I just walked over to it, opened the door, saw that it was a car that hadn't even got air conditioning fitted, and then I did a quick MOT check on it, and it was a 1 litre. And so, he lied to me. And then I said, okay, what about the advisories on the MOT that done, the suspension, bushes, and tyres? He said, then he went on the for about 8 to 10 minutes about why he didn't do the advisories on MOT when he sold cars. Now, I was just looking for an answer, yes or no. If you then start wasting my time for 8 to 10 minutes of my client's time by giving an explanation about why you don't do the advisories, it just makes me probably think worse of your company. If that makes sense, rather than just saying, oh, we haven't done them, which would have been fine. So I said, look, do you have anything with working air conditioning that's like this? He said, we've got this Fiat 500. Okay. So we took a look at it, and the car had a new rear axle and a cam belt. So that's a good thing. Those are two big things on those that need attention. I checked the rear axle myself. It looked okay. It had been redone. But the car was just quite tatty for, I think £2,500, and it was a 2008 with 95,000 miles on the clock. It was a lounge spec, which is good. I know the 500s quite well, and it could have been a good car for my client, but it just felt a little bit tatty and down a heel for £2,500, really. And of course, given the treatment I had so far at that place, I wasn't sort of convinced that there wasn't anything else wrong with it. So we then found a 2008 Renault Clio. Now, it doesn't sound very exciting. Like, why would you buy a Clio for that amount of money that's 17 years old? But this one had really low mileage. It's 40,000 miles, and it said one owner from new, and it looked okay in the photographs. So we went to see it. Unfortunately, the owner was abroad, but he'd left a family member so we could have a look at it. And we got to where it was. It was stored at a barn out in the countryside. And apart from being a little bit dusty, it was immaculate. The only problem with it was both the mirror caps. One was a bit scratched, one had paint peel on it, and there was a deep scratch on the driver's door. Apart from that, the car was immaculate inside and out. The underside was particularly good. The history fell out of the glove box. I saw it all being done by the same place all the way from 2010 to 2024. Same owner all the way through. Lived out in London, and he'd obviously ordered it from new with this really weird specification where the car's got alloy wheels, a twin electric sunroof, but no air conditioning, which is really weird. But apart from the body damage on it, and the fact that the cam belt had been replaced twice, once in 2013 and once in 2018, and needed doing again because it's every 5 years or 72,500 miles on this 1.2 D4F engine. So I spoke to the chap. He was abroad, so I got to speak to him, and I said, look, he's done the cam belt on this because there's no record of it. And then he has said, oh, it doesn't need doing because it's not been 72,000 miles. It's already had to. I was thinking, like, it's 72,500 miles or 5 years, whichever's earliest. So that's not what I wanted to hear, but okay. So I just said, okay, can I have some money off, please? And to be fair, he gave me £300 off immediately, and so the car was £2,500, which actually is pretty good. Like, she seems to like it. It's a little bit faster than the Get. It's only got 73 horsepower, but her previous car only had 61 horsepower. So there we go. But I was just amazed at what wasn't sort of there. We could buy it privately, but there's no real guarantees you buy privately if anything happens. So that's not a problem. And you do actually have 6 months at least, really, with a dealership if anything goes wrong. But they have to prove that the fault wasn't there at the point of purchase. So you actually have quite a lot of rights in that way. But I was just sort of not particularly happy with a lot of what we saw. It would just, if I hadn't sort of been there, I think it could have been quite dangerous for my client. So just really exercise caution if you're after one of these little cars for under £3,000, because it doesn't always end very well, actually, when you do look at them. Anyway, thank you ever so much once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment below. We shall see you again very soon for some more vague, not particularly interesting musing.